Okay.
There we go. There we go.
There we go.
Hello.
Awesome. Okay. Okay, how are you?
I'm great. How are you doing? Obviously, amazing presentation.
Thanks.
All day yesterday, all day today. Awesome.
Everybody's been awesome. It's been amazing. Yes, we got some badass ladies.
We do. And I am so thrilled and honored to be amongst all of you. And I just love that there's badass women real estate investors that are out there just crushing it. I think it's awesome.
Yes. Yeah, I'm like, there. I was like, there needs to be more ladies out here. I know you guys are out here. Let's bring you a voice and get you out here.
So and it's amazing that you put together this summit and that you've got 3 full days of just kick-ass, badass women. I just love it.
I've been looking forward to your presentation. I'm glad that you're coming and hanging out with us. I'm going to let you take it away, and then I'll be here. Are you going to? And then you're going to do questions at the end.
I am, and I do have some slides too, so so everybody can follow along. Right? Perfect. Before I get to that, though, I do want to tell everybody a little bit about myself and how I got here and into this thing called real estate and real estate investing. I have been in real estate for investing for about 25 years now. Yes, I started when I was 10. Just kidding. And interestingly enough, I did not choose real estate. Real estate chose me. I was kind of thrown into the deep end of the pool. My grandmother passed away and she had this very large estate that was $4 million in debt. And she had holdings in Arizona and California. And I went off to Arizona knowing nothing about real estate, nothing about investing or anything. So, and it was a little different time then, you know, because we didn't have things like this. We didn't have REI groups and we didn't have Meetup and we didn't have all the things, even the internet was, you know, not widely used at the time, surprisingly. But, you know, so there wasn't really a lot of support system. So I really had to open my mouth and start asking questions. So off to Arizona I go. We had 38 townhome units. We had a sewer treatment plant and we had some land. Now the townhome units were only about 40% occupied and a lot of them were broken. So I had to fix them before I could even rent them. So I was kind of doing a little bit of fix and hold before it was a popular thing. And I literally had to surround myself with people that had the answers to the questions that I needed to ask. Fast forward, I realized that I liked this thing called real estate because every situation was different and it was ever changing. And I realized I also kind of had a head for it, which was great. So it took me about 3 years. I did end up bringing us back into the black, paid off all the debt, got the townhome units to 100% occupied, and realized that because we were in such a boutique market, that we were not going to be able to sustain any profitability. So I decided to sell the 38 townhome units. We sold the sewer treatment plant. Thank God, that's a crappy business. And I decided to build on the land. And my family didn't want any part of that. And so I said, okay, I'm going to buy the company, which I did. And I knew nothing about land development. I had no idea about construction or land development or any of that stuff. So I hired a contractor. And I realized very quickly that he was going to bankrupt me before we even came out of the ground on this first project that I was doing. And so I fired him and I started my own construction company, knowing nothing about construction. I found a qualifying party. We ended up having all of our licenses. Within 3 years, we were the largest private employer in the county. And I was running, like I said, 36 employees, and I was running probably 7 days a week, 18 hours a day. And it was putting me in an early grave. The stress of all of that was just paramount. But I was doing really well. I was very successful. I was not leveraged very much. I was only encumbered about 10%. I had a lot of liquidity. I had a lot of assets. And I was very fortunate because all of this was ramping up into the 2005, 2006. And then we know what happened in 2007 and 2008, right? The crash came. And I thought to myself, this isn't going to happen to me because I'm only 10% leveraged. Boy, was I wrong. The crash literally happened right on top of my head. And the reason is that people that owed me money couldn't pay me. So it took me about 3 years, but I ended up being able to pay everybody off that I owed money to, even though I wasn't being paid. And at the end of the day, 3 years later, I walked away after the crash having lost $20 million. Now, I don't mean to make light of that because it's certainly a very hefty amount of money. The thing is that I don't look at that as a failure. A lot of women get involved in real estate and they're scared to death that they're going to fail. And I want you to know you can survive it as long as you learn from it. It's not a failure. I call my experience a very difficult learning experience. But the thing is that it shaped me. It shaped me as an investor. It shaped me in terms of my dealing with money. It shaped me in terms of what are my risk tolerances. So I was able to really, when I came back in to real estate, I really was able to figure out where I wanted to be and who I was as an investor. And that's a really important thing, everybody. Really sit down with yourself. We all hear when we talk about real estate and real estate investing, when we go to summits, what's your why, right? And we all have that. That's a very personal thing of why we're here and why we are doing this real estate investing thing, you know, and making sure that we want to obtain and reach our goals. But we don't know what our what is. And what I mean by that is, what do you need right now, right? What do you need? Do you need chunks of cash? Do you need streams of monthly cash flow? Do you need both? Do you need depreciating assets? Do you need, are you a little less risk adverse? So you might be a little more of a risk taker. And so when you sit down with yourself and put numbers to that, and have this meeting with yourself every single year, because that literally changes as you grow as an investor, what your what is. So determine what your what is, what you need right now. And that's going to kind of guide your path of where you're going to invest your hard-earned dollars, and how you can obtain those dollars to get to your why. Okay, so keep that in mind. That's a really important piece of real estate and real estate investing, because there's lots of different things that are out there. But it's a very personal thing of where you want to put your money. So I challenge you to have that meeting with yourself and figure out what your what is and put numbers to it. How soon do you need that? Do you need, you know, an extra $1,000 a month because you want to supplement bills, paying bills, or you want to take a vacation? So put actual numbers to it, and then have that meeting at least every year, if not every 6 months, and make sure that you're on your path to that why and obtaining that why. Okay, so for me, let me share my screen here. Oh, Stacy, I need to be able, I'm still disabled for sharing my screen.
I know, it was weird. I couldn't get you advanced sharing off. Okay, try that now.
Ah, there we go. Okay, great.
Okay.
Perfect. Okay, can everybody see my screen?
Yes, looks great.
Fantastic. All right. I'm going to move myself out of the way here. Okay. So as you know, I am Paige Panzarello. I am the cash flow chick. And I came back into real estate doing what everybody else does, because after you lose $20 million, you have to build your capital back up, right? And so I did. I started out by wholesaling. I did some fixing and flipping, and that started to build up my capital reserves. I've got some buy and holds, etc. But all the while, I was studying this thing called notes. And I thought, what is this thing called notes? So what are notes? It's really simple. Notes are just a promise to pay. There are many different types of notes that you can buy. But anytime that you finance a car or finance a house or even charge a credit card, when you sign, that's your promise to pay. You're promising to pay the bank back for the money that they have lent you, okay? And there's many different kinds of notes that you can buy. You can buy notes, like I said, on cars. You can buy notes on houses, mortgages in essence. You can buy notes on judgments. You can even buy the credit card notes. And typically we buy them at a discount. Now, I focus on first position, non-performing notes secured by real estate. I was heavily involved. The bulk of my portfolio is in residential real estate, but I also have some commercial. I'm branching out into commercial real estate as well. So there's many, many different kinds. There's first position, second position. There are performing notes, there are non-performing notes. And so there's a variety of different avenues that you can go, even just within this little niche, right, of notes and notes investing. Again, I buy distressed mortgages. So my notes that I buy are non-performing, right? So what's the difference between performing and non-performing? The difference is just like it sounds. A performing note, and you can buy performing notes too, by the way. A performing note is a note that is paying. So if you focus on residential real estate notes, your borrower is now paying their mortgage, right? And you don't have the headache, so you're cash flowing, but you don't have the headache of those tenants and toilets because you're not the landlord, you're the bank. And believe me when I tell you, it's really good to be the bank. Okay. So I told you that I focus on non-performing notes and I focus on first position. And that sounds a little crazy, right? Why on earth would you intentionally buy a non-performing note, something that isn't performing? Well, there's a method to my madness. I buy non-performing notes because I get a much bigger discount on the purchase price. And everybody knows we make our money when we buy an asset and we collect our money when we exit or sell that asset, right? So for a non-performing note, because it's non-performing, I get a much bigger discount on my purchase price, and I thereby build in a cushion of equity because I buy on a discounted rate on the current market value of the securing collateral. So in essence, the house is the securing collateral, and I buy as a big discount, and I'm going to get to some numbers in a little bit, a much bigger discount because it's non-performing, and I build in a cushion of equity. After what happened to me in 2008, again, I'm very risk averse as an investor. So it was important to me to have some stability, some footing. And when I came to notes, I think you're going to understand maybe a little bit, just a little bit, at the end of my presentation, why angels sang for me when I got into this space, because it checks all of my boxes, okay? So why on earth would I buy a non-performing note? Because I build in equity. I get a much bigger discount and I build in equity, and that means more profit for me, okay? All right, so is there competition in note investing? Sure. I mean, there's competition in every type of investment that you do. The cool thing is that I don't have to do I don't spend not one single dollar, $0 on marketing for my deals. Zero. And I'm going to get to that in a moment. But there is competition. It's a lot, I call it a lot more gentle form of investing because literally the deals come to my inbox, my email, and I am able to just, sometimes we get exclusive tapes. So sometimes I beat out the competition because I get exclusive tapes. And sometimes I am bidding against other bidders, but it's a lot less competition and it's a lot smaller niche. And it's just I like to think of us as collaborators in the note space. There's a lot more collaboration than there is competition, which is awesome. Not to mention the fact, everybody, that mortgages and houses have been around for a long time, right? People tend to like to live in houses, and life happens every single day. Every single day life happens to people. There's downsizing, there's death, there's divorce, medical issues. All those things happen on a daily basis, regardless of whether we're in COVID or not. And COVID presents some very interesting times. So I'm going to get to that in just a moment as well. And everybody, if you have questions, please put them in the chat box and I will get to them. Just bear with me. Okay. So I don't spend any marketing money at all. Zero. I don't do yellow letters. I don't have to knock on doors. I don't have to drive for dollars. I don't have to do any of that stuff. Literally, I build relationships. That's all I do. How do I find my deals? I build relationships. I go to conferences. I meet asset managers. I reach out to them on the internet. There's referral. This is a very reputation-based niche of real estate investing. And there's a lot of referrals that happen between myself and asset managers. And asset managers, believe it or not, will refer you to other asset managers, which is really cool. So that's all I do. I build relationships with people. Real estate is all about people and relationships. No matter what medium you choose, it's all about relationships. And for me, I love to be able to create another relationship with another person and be successful together. That's the collaboration part. Okay, so let's talk about current market trends, because we are in a really interesting time with COVID. Excuse me. And I pulled some numbers. I want to show you some of the numbers, okay? And why is this important? Okay, so in November of 2019, so a little over a year ago, right? We were looking at, now these charts are just for my focus, okay? So just residential 1 to 4, single family houses, first position liens, okay? Not second position, not HELOC, not land, not commercial, just single family homes, first position. We were looking in November at $57.46 billion of distressed debt, okay? 57, that means delinquent mortgages because life happens to people. We all know that, right? Now, in September, and they haven't come out with the December numbers yet, so I had to use September of 2020. So less than a year later, look at what happened. We are looking at same category, $75.53 billion in distressed debt. In less than a year, everybody, that's a difference of $18 billion, which spells for note investors opportunity. And I want you to know this is unprecedented, okay? That's a 23.92% increase in less than a year. In a normal situation, everybody, real estate, when you get into distressed mortgages, we see increases anywhere between maybe 1% and 3% per year. This is an almost 24% increase in less than a year because of what is happening in COVID. And I am very fortunate because I am in a position as a note investor to be able to make money, but help people stay in their homes. That's my main objective. Whenever I go into buying a note, my objective, we're going to talk about exit strategies in a little bit, but my main objective is to get them to reperform and to stay in their home, which is really cool. Okay, so some headlines, and these are from the middle of last year, right? So we're looking at distressed debt balloons to almost $1 trillion, nears the 2008 peak. Mortgage defaults could pile up at a pace that dwarfs 2008. It already is, everybody. I just showed you the numbers. You can see here that they're expecting a tidal wave, and it's coming. I'm seeing it already. Interestingly enough, here's another thing. Howard Marks, if any of you know about Howard Marks of Oak Tree Capital, who currently right now, Oaktree Capital has $19.4 billion under management in other real estate activities. Okay. So Oaktree has that, and he has just now started a fund for another $15 billion just to buy distressed mortgages. Now, do you think he's stupid, or do you think that he knows something that most of us don't? Right? Of course, he knows something that most of us don't. And they are gearing up. I mean, their minimum investment for their investors in that fund is $10 million. So there's some heavy hitters that are going to be buying these giant pools of notes, which is the good news, is that it starts to filter down to us as well. Now, I can't buy from the big five, but Howard Marks can. So, you know, of course, Chase and Wells Fargo and Bank of America, et cetera. I can't buy from them, but I do buy from hedge funds that are 2 steps down, right? And the pricing is still really great. So I'm in a good position. And new note investors, I want to tell you a little secret about note investors and asset managers, because everybody gets fearful when I talk about asset managers. Asset managers do not care if you're new. In this business, however, you don't ever fake it till you make it. They don't care if you're new. They just care if you have money. That's what they care about, and that you're going to close the deal. That's all they care about. Okay. So don't be fearful of asset managers, because they have product to sell. They're very approachable. And this is something that you can do even as a newbie. Okay. All right. So how do you make money the way that banks do? Well, you become the bank. It's pretty simple. You literally, as a note investor, become the bank. You are the lender, okay? And remember that you're buying the paper, you're buying the debt that is secured by the house, which is really cool. And we're going to talk about exit strategies in just a minute. So banks control the transaction. Banks dictate the terms. Banks collect the money. Banks set the timetable. And it is really, really good to be the bank. Here's another kicker about note investing that I love, is that I can do this business literally anywhere in the world. As long as I have a cell phone and an internet connection, I can be on a beach somewhere doing this business, okay? Anywhere in the world, which is really important to me, because when I was in Arizona, I was stuck. I had to be there. I was away from my family and my friends, and I was working 18 hours a day, 7 days a week. This business, and we're going to talk about this in a minute too, it's very front end loaded, and I'll explain that in a minute, okay? So you can do this business anywhere in the world, which is very freeing. All right, so let's talk about some exit strategies. And I'm going to throw some really simple math numbers here, okay? So unpaid principal balance of a loan, let's say, is $100,000. So that's the balance, that's the unpaid principal portion of the loan. There are other fees that are also attached, and we call those our legal collectible balance. So it's the unpaid principal, plus we as note investors are able to secure our investment if there are delinquent taxes, for instance, because oftentimes a mortgage will have impound, you know, the property taxes and the insurance. And if they're not paying the mortgage payment, then probably not paying the taxes and insurance as well. So we as the lender have the legal right to pay those on behalf of the borrower, and then they become collectible to us. So it gets added to the loan, okay? And I'm not going to talk about all the different things that we can do, but there's lots of them. So our legal collectible balance, that's the difference between the principal and the fees that we've also paid, is $120,000 for this example, okay? Current market value of the house. Now, I typically will buy an asset that's secured by a house, and the asset, my note, is oftentimes underwater. So it's in distress, meaning they owe me more money than the house is actually worth. And again, the reason that I do that is because I get a much bigger discount when I buy my note, okay? Houses that have equity, the asset managers have a tendency to want to get paid the most amount of money that they can. And they feel that if there's equity in the house, that they can get a higher price. And sometimes they do, but understand, don't get caught up in the equity because you're only owed as much as you're owed. You cannot collect 1 penny more than you're owed, okay? So I buy houses that are assets, distressed mortgages on houses that are underwater, okay? So they owe me more than the house is worth. So current market value of the house in this example is $80,000. They owe me $120,000, but the current market value is $80,000. The note purchase price, because again, I buy at a very big discount based on the current market value of the securing collateral, the house. So I'm going to take the $80,000 and discount it. And for easy numbers, I'm going to say, and it's starting to go down. It was lower even when I started. I started buying at about 36 to 48 cents on the dollar on the securing collateral when I started this. Note investing, the pricing had gone up and now it's coming back down. So let's call it for this example, 50%. So I buy that note that is face value, $120,000 is owed. I buy it for $40,000, okay? Now, workout costs, just like fixing and flipping properties, we are fixing and flipping paper. So there are some workout costs, and I generally equate anywhere between $5,000 and $7,500, depending upon judicial versus non-judicial foreclosure states, and depending upon, that's mainly the most reason that I have that range, because judicial foreclosure states are a little more expensive because we have to go to court in order to foreclose. We're going to talk about that in a moment. So our workout costs, our rehab costs of this paper in this example is $5,000. So we're all into this note for $45,000, okay? So automatically, before I even do anything to attempt to contact the borrower, I've already built in $35,000 in equity. That's risk mitigation, everybody, because if the market drops, as we know in a fix and flip situation, if the market drops 6 months later and you've anticipated a 12 or 15% return and the market drops by a lot, you're now in hot water, right? You're underwater. In my scenario, if the market drops 10 or 15%, I'm still okay because I've got a built-in cushion of equity already into this note, okay? Okay. Now, I put all of our numbers here on the right side. We're going to talk about the 4 main exit strategies that we use in note investing. Now, the cool thing is that there's actually 23 different exit strategies available as note investors. Now, we don't use all 23 note exit strategies every day, but they're available to us, which mitigates risk, right? We usually use 4 main exit strategies in our day-to-day operations. And we never know which one is going to apply because there is an unknown factor in the borrower, okay? So when we do our numbers, we do our numbers to project what any of these 4 situations would look like in terms of our return on transaction. And I'll explain that in a moment too. Actually, I'll do it now. Return on transaction, we all hear about ROI, right? Return on investment. Return on transaction in note investing is what I call, is my version of ROI. And the reason is that sometimes as note investors, we are able to enter into and exit our notes in less than a year. So my numbers are return on transaction because if I do ROI, that's typically a 12-month period of time. Return on transaction is measurable if we exit a note sooner than that, okay? All right, so foreclosure. This is my least favorite exit strategy of all 4 of them because again, what I like to do is work with my borrower and get them to reperform so they can stay in their house and I get to make a nice chunk of money doing that, okay? And I like to cash flow. I am the cash flow chick after all. So foreclosure, there are half the country is judicial foreclosure states and half the country is non-judicial foreclosure states. The difference is that in a judicial foreclosure state, we have to go to court and get the court's permission to foreclose on that property, okay? That takes a little bit longer period of time. And as we know, now things are taking a little bit longer as well. There is a misnomer with regard to COVID. I want you to know that a lot of people say, well, you can't, there's a moratorium on foreclosures because of COVID. Not true. Not true in my space. Excuse me, one second. The reason is because I buy conventional mortgages. Yes, there is a moratorium on any GSEs, government enterprises, right? So that's FHA, VA, HUD. There are moratoriums on foreclosure with those types of loans. I don't buy those loans. I buy the conventional loans, the ones that have been originated at Wells Fargo. So I'm not beholden to those moratoriums. So keep that in mind, okay? So, but there are a lot of judicial things that are happening across the country, right? People are filing for bankruptcy, a few other things. So in judicial foreclosure states, what used to maybe take 8 to 12 months might now take about 14 to 16 months, okay? So you've got to account for that. Non-judicial foreclosures generally are anywhere between 4 and 6 months, okay? They are conducted by a trustee as opposed to the sheriff, okay, in judicial foreclosure states. And you'll see, everybody calls them mortgages, right? But here in California, for instance, we are a non-judicial foreclosure state. And so our mortgages are called deeds of trust or trust deeds, right? We've all heard those terms. They're interchangeable. The only difference is if you see a deed of trust or a mortgage, the mortgage is in judicial foreclosure states and the deed of trust is in non-judicial foreclosure states, okay? So anywhere from 6 to 16 months, depending upon whether it's judicial versus non-judicial. Short sale, generally 3 to 6 months in a short sale. We all know a short sale. Now, understand, let's say in the short sale, because in my example here, I'm owed $120,000, but the house is only worth $80,000, right? So what if our borrower comes to us and says, I want, I want to be out of this house and I have a buyer for you at $80,000. Will you forgive the remaining $40,000? How fast do you think I'm going to say yes? Right? If anybody's ever done a short sale here, sometimes the banks took 9 months, 18 months to get a short sale through. It's going to take me 30 seconds to say yes if I get an offer like that, right? Very likely. Same thing in a judicial foreclosure state. So if we, in any kind of foreclosure, what happens if we sell that property at a foreclosure auction to a third-party buyer for $80,000? Do you think I'm going to be happy? Probably. What about if we sold it for $70,000? That's my option. I control the starting bid, right? So if we sold it at $70,000, I'm probably going to be pretty happy because it's going to be a short turnaround time. I did not pick up a hammer. I did not have to do anything other than do good due diligence and process that asset, okay, to completion. Short sale, like I said, generally takes 3 to 6 months. The only reason that I say that is because sometimes when we reach out to our borrower, their head is in the sand. Understand the big banks have beat them up. So they don't always pick up the phone for our loss mitigation teams, right? So it sometimes takes a little time to negotiate that and get the paperwork going. But generally speaking, anywhere between 3 and 6 months. So who would be happy, if you short sailed something at 80,000, who would be happy 4 months later to have a $35,000 return? Return on transaction, everybody. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Deed in lieu of foreclosure. Deed in lieu is if the borrower says to us, we don't want this house, but we don't want a foreclosure on our record. Can you let us out of it? I'm willing to sign the deed over to you, Mrs. Bank. And that is considered payment in full for the loan. So I will no longer owe you any money. You now have the house. Well, think about what you can do with the house. Can you fix and flip it? Can you be the bank for a fix and flipper? Can you buy and hold it? So can you fix it up, and if you need to, and then put a renter in there? Are you in an area where you can do a short-term rental? a vacation rental, Airbnb, stuff like that. There's so many different opportunities for you as a note investor by being the bank. And it really mitigates your risk and allows you to create quite a chunk of money. Okay. So deed in lieu of foreclosure, same timeline as the short sale, anywhere between 3 and 6 months. Sometimes it's a little less. Sometimes it can be a little more. You just never know. Sometimes our borrowers need time to move all their stuff out. I've done deed in lieu where I've actually helped the borrower out and paid for a moving truck for them. I gave them 3 months to move out of their house because they needed help, right? So there's so many different things that you can do. And the timeframes are a little bit shorter, of course, in the short sale and the deed in lieu. My favorite, of course, is the reperforming loan. Okay, so now I am working with my borrower to stay in their home, right? They owe me, and value is in the eye of the beholder, everybody. Oftentimes there are borrowers that this is their family home. They've lived there for a long time and they just fell on hard times. That doesn't mean that they're bad people. It just means that life happened to them, right? Now, there are a few players that are out there that take advantage, but for the most part, on the whole, most of my borrowers just had life happen. That's all. So reperforming situation, generally anywhere between 6 to 12 months. I typically like 12 months, especially if we're going to exit and recapture capital. I'll discuss that in a little bit. But 6 to 12 months, and it's called seasoning the loan, right? So we do a trial with our borrowers because they have had, some delinquency there. So we don't automatically do a loan mod. I put in place what's called a trial payment plan or a forbearance agreement. You've all heard, especially with COVID, about the forbearance agreements that have been happening. Now, most of them that are being put in place require that a chunk of money be done at the end of the term of the forbearance agreement. I don't do that. We have many different options. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go through all of them right now, but needless to say, I can reduce, I can forgive debt, I can tack it on to the end, I can lower interest rates, raise interest rates, extend the length of the loan, create chunks of cash and streams of monthly cash flow, because I will oftentimes require that a borrower in a trial payment plan have a little skin in the game, right? They have to give a little chunk of money, a little deposit to say, here's my good faith that I'm going to work with you and actually start to reperform again. And then we have monthly cash flow, of course. Now, at the end, I can hold on to that performing loan now that we've seasoned it, we've gotten it reperforming. I can hold on to it for monthly cash flow. And again, if the air conditioning breaks, they don't call me because I'm the bank, not the landlord. Okay. So no more midnight phone calls. I had a lot of those when I was a landlord back then. Or you can sell it. You can now turn around and sell it if you want to recapture your capital to go get another note or two, right? You can sell it to another note investor, a performing note buyer, and you will discount it slightly, but you're still probably going to make quite a chunk. Now, what happens though if your borrower, I said value is in the eye of the beholder, right? So just because the house is only worth $80,000 doesn't mean that that's what our borrower is going to be willing to pay. They might be willing to pay the $100,000. They might be willing to say, hey, I'm willing to pay you all the money that I owe you. I just need some help. We need to extend, and there's a variety of different things you can do to minimize the house payment, extend the length of the loan, and give them the ability to be successful in reperforming with you. Now, those are the ones that we really like, of course, because I'm into this note for $45,000. Who wouldn't love to earn some interest and some money? Oftentimes borrowers will also refi 5 or 7 years out. So if they agree to pay me that $100,000 or $120,000, we do the trial payment and then we permanently modify the loan. Who would be happy with that? I would. It's awesome. Plus, everybody, keep in mind, when we get a loan to reperform, we're resetting the clock, right? We're, in essence, doing an internal refi. So we start that whole process over. And all of us know in a 30-year loan that for 17 years, the bulk of your payment goes toward interest. And really, in the first 5 or 10 years, it's tremendous. And I'm going to show you an example of that in a little bit. But yes, so the bulk of our payment, goes toward interest, which is awesome. And the borrower gets to keep their home. Okay, so how important is due diligence? If I could get it to go, there we go. Extremely important. As I said, we make our money when we buy and we collect our money when we sell. Due diligence is extremely important because it mitigates your risk and it gives you virtually risk-free note investing, okay? I like to say there's no such thing as bad notes, but there is such a thing as buying notes badly. And due diligence is the way to mitigate that risk. Unfortunately, I don't have time to go into all the due diligence steps, but I will tell you this. Note investing is very front end loaded. And what that means is that the bulk of your time is going to be spent in your due diligence steps before you buy the loan. Once you buy the loan, now you get handed off to your team. You have an external loss mitigation team and servicing company that works on your behalf. So you don't even have to worry about direct dealing with your borrower. They do that for you and you just manage the managers, which is awesome. Okay, so case studies. I'm going to kind of quickly do this because I'm seeing the clock and we've got a little bit, I'm sure people have some questions. So this is a duplex in Arizona, Casa Grande, Arizona. We looked at this note and we always have boots on the ground to go by and take pictures for us. But both these units appeared to be occupied. We didn't know if they were owner occupied or tenant occupied. Current market value of this particular property was $120,000 to $125,000. All in for this note for us was $64,500. So that's the purchase price and the workout costs. We acquired it in late 2018. The property was occupied by unknown persons. We ended up foreclosing on this note and it did come back to us as REO. It was kind of funny because there was going to be a bidder. He contacted our attorney and he had car problems and he actually did us a favor because he didn't end up showing up to the auction and it came back to us. You're going to see why this was beneficial for us in a moment. So our loss mitigation team said to us, well, we need to evict the people that are living there. And I thought differently. I thought, no, let's send out a door knocker and see who's living there and how long they've been there, et cetera. Ended up being 2 families that were paying rent. They'd been there a long time. And we asked them for the name and phone number for the property manager. We contacted the property manager and there were some rents that the property manager was holding. So we were able to collect those rents. And now we started cash flowing. We cash flowed for just a little bit and we ended up wanting to recapture our capital. So we wanted to sell this REO, right? So we asked our property manager, do you have anybody? Do you have investors that you work with that would want a fully loaded, meaning tenant already has tenants in it that have been there for over 5 years? Do you have anybody in mind? Do you have anybody in your circle? And they said, absolutely, we do. So we ended up paying that property manager a commission, a real estate commission. We ended up selling it 21 days later after asking that question for $120,000 in cash. And after closing costs, we had a profit of about $54,500, which is a 54% return on transaction. Our JV partner in this deal made 27%. Who likes investing in real estate the way I do, right? Return on transaction, it was very quick. This was Arizona, non-judicial foreclosure state, so it was a quick turn, which was great. Here's another one. This is a Richmond, Virginia, gorgeous Victorian. Don't fall in love with the houses, by the way. This one was hard not to fall in love with a house, especially because of my rehabber heart. I really wanted to attack this one, but I couldn't. So squatters had done some minor damage in this one. Current market value of this property, again, we buy on current market value, not on ARV. Current market value is 125. ARV for this property was about 225, okay? All in for this note was $54,200. our borrower was deceased and the heirs would not give us a deed in lieu, which ended up being a good thing. The area in Richmond was in the process of gentrification, okay? But it had been a little rough in the past. Right across the street was a brand new rehab. Next door and down the whole rest of the street were multifamily. And this particular house was zoned R3, so it could have been torn down and apartments built, okay? Thankfully, they didn't do that. Squatters had done some minor damage. We took it to foreclosure auction. Now, remember when I said banks control the amount of the opening bid? On this one, our total unpaid principal balance was about $160,000. Our LCB, legal collectible balance, was $217,000. But remember, the ARV as it sat was about 125, okay? I mean, not the ARV, the CMV was 125,000. So we set the opening bid a little higher because we figured this was going to be a highly sought after property. So we set it at $116,828. We were hoping that we would get a bidding war. Sure enough, that's what happened. We sold this property at foreclosure auction for $124,000 and change. Our net profit was $70,000 and change, which is approximately 129% return on transaction. This happened in less than a year, everybody. Our JV partner, of course, was thrilled with his 65%. Now, because I have a rehabber's heart, I followed this property. Sure enough, the one that bought it at foreclosure auction, this is a screenshot of their listing when they listed it. As you can see, the one above is from our realtor. The one below is from their listing when they sold it. They didn't do much difference. You know, they didn't change much. They just cleaned it up a bit. They sold that house for $230,000. Now, imagine if you wanted to fix and flip a property, imagine your profit if you did this note and rehabbed it yourself. It's off the charts, right? Okay, next and last case study, and then we'll get to questions. This is my favorite. This is an owner-occupied single-family residence in Richmond, Kentucky. Last paid to date, everybody, when we took this note, was 4/9/2012. Yes, there are still homes out there that people have been squatting in and have not paid their mortgage, and they're behind 7, 8, 9 years. It's crazy, right? So all in for this non-performing note for us was $49,252. We acquired it in September of 2018. Owner occupied since 1998. And we discover that through good due diligence. Okay, so they've lived in this house since 1998, a really long time. Our legal collectible balance on this one was $95,000. The original interest rate was 10.99%. It's a pretty high interest rate. The husband had a medical condition. He could not work for over 3 years. And our borrowers were contacted by our loss mitigation team. Of course, they wanted to stay in their home. I knew that by looking and doing good due diligence before we even reached out to them, right? So in March of 2019, we put a trial payment plan, that TPP, in place for 6 months. We had a $1,000 reinstatement fee, so we created a chunk of cash, right? Our borrower was successful in our trial payment plan. So for 6 months, they paid us $708 a month, which was where we were going to refi the loan. We were going to modify the loan down to $708 a month. So we wanted to make sure through the trial payment plan that they were going to be consistent and that they could pay it. Okay. So they were successful. That we cash flowed $4,200 and change. Now that did not apply. Those 6 months worth of payments didn't even apply to the new UPB, the new unpaid principal balance. We reduced, which we did end up reducing. I'm going to show you that in a second. So that $4,200 is free money. Did not apply to the balance, okay? Because we later, after that TPP, we modified the balance down to a new balance. Okay, so we converted that to a permanent loan modification 10/1 of 19. So we rolled the past due stuff and we forgave some of it into a new UPB, okay? So we discounted it and I think we forgave somewhere around almost $20,000 in debt, okay? Because we wanted to bring it down to a manageable area for our borrower, and the house was not worth that amount. You know, that $20,000 we weren't going to see anyway. So we wanted to make a successful transaction with our borrower. So we rolled that and we discounted it to $87,000. We reduced the interest rate to 8%, and we extended the length of the loan. By doing that, it reduces their monthly payment, and they could afford the $708 a month. And there was a fee in there as well. So I'll explain that in a moment. Okay, so 480 months, which is a 40-year loan, everybody. So that $1,000 deposit, the free money and 48, plus now after that trial payment, the $100 covered some of our loss mitigation fees. We reduced it to $608, became their new modified loan payment, P&I payment. Our cash on cash return for 1 year was 25.5%. Our amortization schedule shows that of that $608, 580 of it is interest. That's pure profit to me. Profit is the interest that they pay, okay? So massive amount of money. We created a massive win-win. I get paid, the borrower gets to keep their home, right? That's why I love doing what I do. I get to help people, but I also get to make a really nice living, a great deal of money, but while helping people stay in their homes. And there's going to be a lot of that that's starting to happen right now in the note space. As we started out my presentation, I showed you those numbers. So free stuff. If anybody is interested, I am more than happy to send you free stuff. Go to cashflowchick.com/free or /info. The free is a video series of kind of notes investing and what does certain things mean. And then the info is just a bunch of other information that books you can read, podcasts, things like that. So I hope that you have enjoyed my presentation. Again, go to cashflowchick.com/free or /info. I'm happy to send you a bunch of stuff. Again, I am Paige Panzarello. You can reach out to me, follow me on all the social media platforms, of course, or you can reach out to me at info@cashflowchick.com. Okay. Awesome. Yes, well, for free. Let's see some questions.
Yeah, everybody put questions in. So we have a couple more minutes. We have 10 minutes. So my question to you is like, what is the perfect person that would be interested in learning notes?
Anybody.
Anybody?
Anybody can do this. Yeah. So anybody can do this. Again, there are a handful of states that you don't have to have any licensing to do this, everybody. Okay. Educate yourself, please, because there are pitfalls. Don't get me wrong. As long as you know the questions to ask, then you will be able to mitigate that risk. But there are some pitfalls in note investing. Okay, but anybody can do it. You don't need specific licensing. You do need, if there are a handful of states, and your loss mitigation team can help you with this, there's a handful of states where you have to register in that state as a debt buyer, okay? And that's just the revenue enhancement program. That's all that is, okay?
Okay, cool. Let's see. Are there any regulatory requirements, and what's the minimum dollar amount to get started?
Yeah, great questions. Yes, okay, so the one pitfall, if you will, or downfall in note investing is you do have to have cash. Unless you're Oaktree, then there's no financing for notes, okay? But there's money all around us, everybody. We know that. I mean, we joint venture with people. There's private money lenders that are more than happy to get their money active, things like that. It's just a matter of creating those relationships with people, right? Now, in terms of dollars, there are riskier notes that, I mean, you can pick up a note first, second position. Some second position loans are less expensive. I have heard of people picking up, I've actually done this. I've picked up notes for $3,500. They're fewer and further between, but they are out there. And I've actually had asset managers say, we need to get these off our books. And I've gotten notes for free. They've literally just given them to me with my other purchase. And you can buy notes on A-class properties, in highly sought after areas for a couple $100,000. Now, I don't invest in California because I like to take that same $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 that I'm going to invest in one note and put it in different buckets across the country and mitigate my risk that way. But California notes are available. I mean, there's all kinds of different notes. So literally anywhere from, you know, $2,000-$3,000, which are riskier. Don't get me wrong, everybody, those are riskier notes, all the way up to a couple $100,000. My sweet spot is generally anywhere between, I'm going to say the value of the securing collateral is anywhere between $50,000 and $250,000. That's my sweet spot. Okay.
Okay, we have another one. Do you like non-judicial or judicial? Which market do you prefer?
Obviously, non-judicial is more preferred because it's a shorter period of time and I don't have to go to court. But understand that 50% of the country is judicial, right? So if you say no to judicial, you're cutting off 50% of your opportunity. Okay. Now, I don't invest in New York. I don't invest in Jersey, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania, or Maryland. Typically, because especially New York is a judicial foreclosure state and it takes 4.5 to 5 years to get a foreclosure to happen. That does not fit my timeline. That doesn't fit my what, right? As a note investor. So yeah, I mean, just pick and choose.
Why would anybody want to invest in New York for this?
New York properties.
Yeah, just because
properties.
They're like, okay, we're going to wait. We're going to go through this process. If we get it in 5 years, we just get it in 5 years.
Yeah. And they're more discounted because the sellers know that it's going to take longer to foreclose on properties in New York. So you get a much bigger discount even on New York assets. And not all New York, don't get me wrong. I mean, like New York City, yes, is 4.5 to 5 years in terms of a foreclosure, but some of the suburbs are not. You know, some of the suburbs are less than around a year. Yeah.
You got to go upstate New York. Okay. Who pays the taxes when the mortgage payment is $500?
Yeah. So again, our borrowers are obligated to pay the property taxes and insurance. But if they can't pay their mortgage payment and haven't paid their mortgage payment, very likely they haven't paid their property taxes. So we as the bank, and this is part of the due diligence, we as the bank have the legal right to protect our asset because there are such things as tax liens and tax deed sales, right? So oftentimes I will build into my workout costs when I discover any delinquent property taxes on, you know, that are outstanding. And as long as the numbers work for me, I can pay those property taxes or I can wait, but I will build that into my workout costs. So I anticipate in my due diligence before I buy the note having to pay at least 1 year's worth.
Okay.
Yeah.
How does somebody get started in this business?
Educate, 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 and start opening your mouth. Start building your tribe. My goal is to build an army of note investors. I would love nothing more than, you know, to have an army of note investor collaborators because it is highly collaborative in this space. Lots of note investors get together and buy pools together. So it's awesome. But that's how you get started. You have to educate yourself. You have to know the due diligence and the pitfalls. And that's why I offer that free information because I want to give you some of that information so you can get started.
Yeah. That's kind of like the storage investing world. It's a very small niche and you have to really educate yourself on it. But then once you get it, it's like a home run.
It is. It is. And I typically, you know, it sounds outrageous, 129% return on transaction, right? In less than a year. That sounds outrageous. I do that typically about once a quarter. I'm not going to promise you all, you know, that all the time. But we generally average much better than hard money lending rates, you know, on average with every asset. But yeah, we do have some that are home runs and knock them out of the park. Yep.
I love it. Okay, one more. What's the best way to get in touch with asset managers?
Best way to get in touch with asset managers is to attend the conferences. Now we're obviously on, you know, with COVID, that's a little difficult, but they're everywhere. They're all over the place. They're on LinkedIn, they're on Bigger Pockets. Again, there are virtual conferences that they're going to. So that's really just the place to get started. But again, know what you're doing because again, asset managers, they don't care if you're new. They do want to know that you're not going to just kick tires. They don't have time for that. They don't want to waste their time for that. So know what you're doing, and just, you know, rely on the support of your team and network. That's it. It's pretty easy.
Actually, one more question came through. Any tax benefits for this, and what are the tax disadvantages?
Yeah, so tax disadvantages, you are looking at straight income. When we are talking about notes, generally speaking, it is straight income for you, but hopefully you have other assets that you're able to kind of offset that. Definitely talk with your CPA about that, because I did, you know, when you first start out, it's nice to have the income, but then you have to offset it with depreciating assets and a few other things. So plus I have a really big net loss carry forward from 2008.
And
so
just have a really good accountant.
a really good accountant, and they are out there. They are out there, definitely.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well, I think you got it. I think you got it all. That was amazing. I love it so much. You know, that's why I said there's so many awesome, amazing ways to invest in real estate, and people just, they're only thinking about wholesaling and rehabbing. And I totally get that, you know, but like there's so many wonderful like ways just like this to invest in real estate.
Exactly. But, you know, again, Stacy, like we said earlier, just really know what your what is, because that really is going to dictate. Real estate's not going anywhere anytime soon. Any of these things that all of us are talking about, it's not going anywhere. So don't get that FOMO thing, you know, like don't have fear of missing out. Please just breathe, right? Just breathe, because it's going to be here. But educate yourself that in any asset that you're going to invest in, and know who you are as an investor.
And I was going to say too, like, I mean, pretty much everybody I ever talked to, like I say, the like wholesaling and rehabbing is essentially like it's a gateway drug. Because I mean, also you also, I mean, I know you've done that before too. I did that too. That's how you kind of get in. But then once you get in and you really start seeing all these different opportunities, it's like, why am I wholesaling and rehabbing?
Exactly. Plus, it's really location specific. Like you've got to be there. And with this, that's why I love what I do, because I can literally be on the beach and do my business.
I love that. That's how I am too. And actually that should be everybody's goal. Like your goal should be like, you should be able to run your business from anywhere in the world.
Yep.
That's the ultimate goal. So I get everybody wants to wholesale and rehab. That's your gateway drug, but you don't want to be sticking with that forever, because there's way too many opportunities out there.
Agreed. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I appreciate your time.
Thank you for having me. And thank you everybody for participating. Great questions. Appreciate it. And hope to see you soon.
Okay. So we'll talk soon. Okay. All right. Take care. All right. Awesome. Okay. Let me remove your spotlight here.